everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Origins in Stellaris represent the backstory of your species before it became an interstellar empire. They come with some unique modifiers or bonuses, and sometimes even force you into unique playstyles. In this video, we're going to go through all of the different origins, talk about what they do, and rank them into a tier list so you can understand how powerful they are in relation to one another. I am going to be looking at this tier list from the point of view of the basic settings in Stellaris, which means we're going to be having 2 guaranteed habitable worlds. For that reason, some of the origins that have very low or no guaranteed habitable worlds will be much lower on this tier list than you might otherwise expect. Before we can look at that tier list though, I need to say a special thank you to Starbreeze Publishing for sponsoring this video. Dive into the unforgiving world of The Tribe Must Survive, a gripping tribe builder with a survival twist set in a Lovecraftian Stone Age. Early access release starts on February the 22nd for $19.99, but you can experience the thrill early with the Steam Next Fest demo that runs until February the 12th. Witness the cosmic horror and challenge your strategic prowess in this roguelike adventure. Manage your tribe's dynamics, navigate dark dangers, and make tough decisions to lead them into the light. Follow the link down below in the description to wishlist the game now on Steam and brace yourself for the gripping journey. Don't forget that you can also try the game out right now in the Steam Next Fest and get a taste of the challenges that lie ahead. The Tribe Must Survive, where every failure is a step closer to triumph. I guarantee you that you probably won't survive your first eclipse, but that's all part of the fun. Support this channel and get your hands on The Tribe Must Survive by following the link down in the description. We'll look at the items right at the bottom of this list in the F tier first. I want to say there is still quite a bit of variety down here at the bottom of the list. Some of these items aren't necessarily outright bad, but they're not really going to give you much of a bonus, and you could pick another origin which will be giving you a bonus. Then on the other hand, some of them are quite bad and they're actually going to negatively impact your game. Let's dive in and find out what we have. Galactic Doorstop is an origin that really needs some love or attention. You'll start with a dormant gateway, which in the first few years of the game will bring you somewhere between 100 and 1500 alloys and or minerals, a space amoeba to fight, and then a special project that creates the From Gateway Sent archaeological site. This will then allow you to reactivate the gateway, which unlocks gateway construction technology. It does not unlock mega engineering technology, although having a ruined gateway or completed gateway in your space will slightly boost the chances of rolling mega engineering later in the game. Now you might be wondering why this is all the way down here in the F tier. Nothing I've said there sounds very negative, and you're right. You don't get any explicit negatives for taking this origin, you simply can't take any other origin. And let's say you finally unlock that gateway and open it, well, when it is reactivated, it's usually late enough in the game that it's matched pair, because whenever you open or activate a gateway, it will open and activate another gateway somewhere in the galaxy. That pair will usually already be owned and the system will be inhabited by other aliens. You cannot open that gateway usually early enough for it to make sense. What this origin really needs in order to be playable is additional bonuses. Give us something when we open this gateway. Maybe we get the guaranteed option of researching mega engineering at year 30 or 40 when we reactivate that gateway. This would move it from the F tier probably up to the B or A tier, and it finally won't be the butt of most Stellaris jokes. Life Seeded starts your empire on a size 30 Gaia world, which is very good. Gaia worlds give additional bonuses, which I'll look at in just a moment. Your planet also starts with a bubbling swamp, a crystalline cavern, and a dust cavern planetary feature. This means you'll be able to mine all 3 of the special resources, or at least the level 1 special resources, which is very good. However, then we get the negatives. Your species will have the Gaia world preference. This means if you live on any planet other than a Gaia world, you will be at 0% habitability. So every world other than a Gaia world is in essence a tomb world to your species and basically unusable and uncolonizable. If that was not enough, you will also have no guaranteed habitable worlds. If you don't run with guaranteed habitable worlds, this isn't a problem for you, but having your species set to Gaia world preference is really crippling early in the game. Stellaris is a game where small advantages early on will accumulate, and eventually you will snowball and get bigger and better than other rival empires around you. If you don't get those early bonuses, if you set yourself back from the pack, you can fall behind, and that will have disastrous consequences. This could be somewhat usable if you're running a one-planet challenge game where you're not planning on colonizing any other planets. Gaia worlds do have 100% habitability not just for your species, but for every species in the game, and you will get bonus resources from jobs, increased biological and lithoid pop happiness, and a bit of increased resettlement chance. Altogether, that means your Gaia world is slightly more efficient than other regular worlds. But having that species preference locked into only Gaia worlds is very crippling. Why would you want to cripple your early game if you didn't need to? Honestly, I think the devs could remove this species preference lock and life seeded would still be balanced. It simply, I think, is not necessary to have that in there. So that would be what I would change in order to improve life seeded and put it up maybe in the B tier. Continue blocking the guaranteed habitables, but don't force our species to be stuck on Gaia world preference. Problem with that is it starts looking a lot like another origin that we'll get to in just a moment. Doomsday is labelled as a challenging origin for a reason. Your homeworld will explode after 35 to 45 years. On top of that, you'll also get no guaranteed habitable planets in order to make sure your civilization survives. You will have to go out, explore, and pray to RNGesus. If that wasn't enough, you also get the Doomsday modifier on your capital. This will grant you bonus alloys, minerals, and energy credits from jobs, which is good, and I'll get into how that can be abused a little later. However, at the top level, it's granting negative stability, negative habitability, and those two combined are going to absolutely decimate your resource output. Regular biological empires will find it tough to produce any research, unity, food, or basically anything on this planet, and they might also find it very expensive to live here, as habitability will be very low, and that means you'll have massive costs to upkeep and amenities usage. Flipping this origin on its head, if you play as a machine empire, this is basically an A-tier origin. Machine empires can bite that -30 stability, completely ignore the negative habitability because they will always have 100% habitability on every single world, even a Doomsday world, and milk that plus 120% alloys, minerals, and energy credits at the top level. Lithoids can do this to a lesser degree, but don't try and play this origin as a regular biological unless you're looking for a challenge. Subterranean comes with a host of quite interesting and unique effects. Your species will have the Cave Dweller trait, which we'll look at in a moment. All of the mining districts on your planet will be uncapped. This means you can have as many mining districts as you have districts available on the planet. You don't have to worry about features. Those districts will also grant you +2 housing, and for every 3 you build, you will unlock a building slot. Your planets also get -75% orbital bombardment damage, meaning if you combine this with either adaptability or unyielding, or put down shield generators, you will hit the maximum orbital bombardment damage reduction modifier, which I think is capped at 98%. On the negative side of things here, you're going to get +10% building and district cost, as well as upkeep, and -10% planetary build speed. This will have a noticeable effect on your early game economy, slowing you down. Cave Dweller is going to slow you down even more by reducing all of your biological pop growth speed by 20%. That is very nasty. You will also get +10% empire size from pops, which honestly isn't that bad, you can kind of ignore that. On the plus side, you'll get 15% extra minerals from jobs, and a species minimum habitability of 50%. This kind of means your empire will function as a robot-light empire. You won't get 100% habitability on all worlds like robots, but you'll get half of that, which is something, I suppose. That negative pop growth speed on top of the increase to build cost and upkeep is really going to slow you down early game. I do not think the increase to minimum habitability is worth it at all. This Origin does present you with some interesting options if you decide to go for a Crisis run-through. You'll only need minerals to build Crisis ships, and as mineral districts are uncapped, plus the bonus here from Cave Dweller, you'll be able to get lots and lots of minerals, and you should survive long enough given that orbital bombardment reduction damage, while assuming you build enough armies. Possibly you want to go for reanimators, I'm thinking. On top of that, if you take the Noxious trait, you can lock in your species' minimum habitability, or actually habitability in general, at 80%. You'll always be getting some negatives on planets, but overall it's again like playing Robot Light. If you really want to play a game like that, I don't know why you wouldn't just play as a machine intelligence. I mean, honestly, it just gives you 100% habitability right out of the gate with none of these negatives. Knights of the Toxic God is a fantastically thematic Origin which has a whole load of content behind it. You'll get nightly duties policies, you can construct orders commandery holdings, you'll start with the Quest of the Toxic God situation, and the Orbital Habitats technology unlocked and ready for research. You cannot change the starting system except for a special version of Sol, that's a bit of a negative, and you can remove the Origin effects for a reward if you don't complete the quest for the Toxic God within 100 years. You'll start with a planet covered in unclearable blockers, so it's quite a small planet which will hurt your pop growth speed, and a colonized habitat which has a bunch of knights on it. As the game goes on, your knights will get better and better, producing, depending on what you choose, more unity, research, possibly even increased alloy production empire-wide, and that is really, really good. However, you start with less pops, and your economy at the start of the game is really, really suffering. Yes, you can get to do some crazy things later on, but as I mentioned earlier in this tier list, Stellaris is a game where small additive advantages early on will accumulate. Starting at a massive disadvantage is not something you want to do, and Knights of the Toxic God really does start you at a massive disadvantage. Payback has quite a bit going on, and from a story perspective, it's not as good as Knights of the Toxic God, but still offers you quite a lot of narrative and thematic potential for your game. The problems, right, you're going to start off with 10 less pops. Yes, you heard me right, 10 less pops, so you'll only have 18. That kind of economic disadvantage is honestly almost impossible to break out of unless you play really, really well. You'll also get a bunch of devastation on your capital to start the game, so that's even more economic disadvantage. You will not have 3 of the basic technologies, that's corvettes, planetary government, and scientific method. You won't have any mining stations built. I mean, the list honestly goes on and on here for what is very bad about it. Yeah, later on you might defeat an advanced AI empire and get some bonuses, but honestly, that's not really worth it if you're trying to win the game. If you're trying to have a fun time and you don't mind dying over and over again, then, live, die, repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. Jump in and go for it. Fear of the Dark, like Payback, starts you at a massive economic disadvantage. Yes, you don't have to research 3 basic technologies, but you do have 8 less pops than normal, and -1 research alternatives and -1 leader pool size. Given how important leaders are, and also how important it is to choose technologies at the start of the game and at any point in the game that you need to research, those negative modifiers are very, very painful. Yes, much later, once you get to the mid-game and beyond, this Origin does allow you to unlock an additional civic slot, or possibly turn into a very, very, very nasty empire for free, and that's good, but it doesn't offset this massive disadvantage early on. You'll also get a nice pre-FTL faction spawning in your home system that from time to time might give you a leader, might demand you do something, and might give you some technologies. It's nice, but it does not again outweigh these negatives, and sometimes also they can actually be very, very harmful for your gameplay if you don't behave in the way that they want. Last up in the F tier, we have the newest origin in Stellaris, Riftworld. This gives you plus 25% Astral Rift exploration speed, minus 50% Astral Rift fail probability. It doubles the chances for Astral Rifts to appear in own systems. You will start with the Astral Harvesting Technology research, so you can get Astral Threads from the get-go, and you'll start with the Ruined Planet Astral Rift, along with a nice archaeology site on your capital. Overall, the main bonus of this origin is allowing you to start exploring Astral Rifts sooner, and then you can hope you get lots of goodies from the Astral Rifts that you explore. However, this is so RNG heavy that it doesn't guarantee any success whatsoever, and sometimes it's basically like not picking an origin at all. I think this would be better suited as something like a Civic, or if it's going to remain an origin, I think they need to double down and increase some of the bonuses, or just give it some uniqueness somewhere, rather than just saying, yes, you get to explore rifts a teeny weeny bit faster. We're now up in the C tier. Once we've completed this tier, we'll actually be halfway through the origins in this tier list, which honestly I think is kind of wild. At the moment, there are quite a few origins that definitely need a little bit of a retweak to improve their power and be on par with some of the nicer origins in the game. The Lost Colony origin is quite fun from a roleplay perspective. You're starting off the game as a lost colony of a distant, advanced empire that you no longer have contact with. However, that means that your homeworld is not actually your homeworld, and so instead of starting with 100% habitability, you'll only start with 80%. That is a little bit painful to start off the game with some negative modifiers on your capital. You do have the colonial spirit modifier on your capital though, and this goes somewhat of the way to balancing it out. You'll get plus 10% habitability, locking you in at 90%, which is marginally better than 80%, but still not as good as 100. You'll also get bonus resources from jobs, amenities, and housing, and this modifier does not go away all game long. That is very, very nice. However, that's basically the only bonus you will get. I think if the Custodians came back to this origin, added in some extra events, maybe a couple of situations, which gave you extra bonuses and extra interesting interactions when you finally meet your advanced and long-lost relatives, then this could probably jump up to the B tier, but for now it does sit at the top of the C tier. Fruitful Partnership allows you to spread your seed across the universe. You'll be able to construct starseed garden starbase buildings, which will attract space fauna to then lay your seeds in them, or your seed pods, and they'll then be spread out through the galaxy. They will be landing on planets. Once they're on planets, you can then use these seed pods to open them using a special project and colonize the planet. On the plus side, this allows you to colonize planets far outside of your normal borders and possibly on the other side of the galaxy entirely. On the negative side, it's pretty expensive to do that, and generally it takes a long time for your seeds to spread far and wide. This means it's mostly actually useless for colonization unless you're really lucky. You could flip this on its head, take the Cordyceptic Civic as a hive mind, and then kill all the Tianki space whales that are attracted to your starseed gardens and reanimate them to get a very early navy that is actually reasonably powerful. However, when it's played as intended, when you're not going out there and murdering as many Tianki as you can get your hands on, bonus points for that genocide by the way, yeah, it's definitely C tier. It's not great. You do get some bonuses if the pods land on your own planets. You can get some additional bonuses to research speed and the like, but overall it's generally not that useful and too expensive for what it does. Syncretic Evolution is the poor man's version of Necrophage. You will start with a secondary species that has the Servile trait. 12 of your initial 28 pops will be the Serviles. Now, the Serviles trait isn't inherently bad. It's going to give you 10% happiness on those Serviles, 10% extra resources from jobs, but they will be blocked from generating leaders, working specialist, or ruler jobs. This means unless you are very strict with your population growth and you only grow certain species by selecting that and taking the negative population growth hit from doing so, you may end up with worker problems. You will not be able to easily move your population between worker and up to specialist roles if you end up getting lots of resources from, let's say, space or other empires' tributes, and that then makes the serviles kind of useless if you're just generating lots and lots of excess resources. If you then decide to heavily grow your primary species and not your syncretic secondary species, you're then not using the only bonus that this origin gives. Overall, I really love it, but I think it just needs a few more tweaks from the custodian team, possibly some extra bonuses, maybe a situation, maybe an archaeological dig site. Then it would be a little more rounded, a little more thematic, and provide us with a little more power. Post-apocalyptic gives your species the survivor trait and forces you to spawn on a tomb world. Tomb worlds are inherently the worst type of world in the game because each of their unblocked districts provide the least when adding to population capacity on a planet. The survivor trait is going to give you an extra 70% tomb world habitability and plus 10 years of leader lifespan. This means if you are lucky enough to come across any tomb worlds, and that's important here, it is RNG based because your guaranteed habitables will not be tomb worlds, they'll just be whatever preference you set your primary species to. And that means that for a lot of your game, the plus 70% tomb world habitability bonus might be entirely useless. Yes, you could go with a relentless industrialist build where you specialize with additional tomb world traits, and that does provide some synergy, but you're having to jump through lots and lots of extra hoops to turn your worlds into tomb worlds for very little bonus. This really almost deserves to be in the F tier, but it doesn't take that much away from you, and plus 10 years of leader lifespan is nice to have because leaders are so important in the game now. The Common Ground origin allows you to start the game as the leader of an already established federation. This means you will start with the diplomacy tradition and the federation traditions unlocked, which is nice, but you will have to give up both of your guaranteed habitable worlds for AI empires. Thanks to the work of the custodians, you can now start as any federation type other than a hegemony with this origin, meaning you can start as the most powerful federation, a trade federation, right out of the gate. And that is actually quite strong. You could then combine the power of your allies to launch some relatively early wars on your neighbors and gobble up a couple of planets or vassals from the empires unlucky enough to spawn near you. In the long run, it is generally better to just start off as your own empire and take those two guaranteed habitable planets for yourself, but Common Ground can still be useful. On the Shoulders of Giants starts you with an archaeological site in your capital. You'll also get a mid-game event chain that can give you quite a nice bonus. But you cannot discover any precursor anomalies or sites before you complete your story. After you do, you will be 3 times more likely to discover precursor anomalies or sites, but this comes far too late. Often, the precursors will already have been completed by the time you get around to discovering them, so whilst yes, you're going to be getting some bonuses from these early archaeology sites in your capital and the chain that will spawn as you complete them, you'll be losing out massively because you will not get a precursor. On top of that, archaeology is no longer as powerful in terms of your early game economic contributions as it once was. The Shattered Ring origin starts you on a broken ring world. There will be 2 other ring world sections that start off uninhabitable but can be colonized, and by clearing blockers you can make these ring sections more and more habitable. Do note that this will only be the case if you have guaranteed habitable worlds turned on. If you don't, those ring sections will not be inhabitable in any way, shape or form. Your mining districts on these worlds will give you the special scrap miner job, which produces alloys as well as minerals, though less of both than if you had a separate metallurgist and a miner. If you're not a Gestalt consciousness, you'll also get access to trade districts, so if you want to play a trade-based empire, this could be one of the better origins. Now comes the massive downside. your pops will be locked into having the Ringworld species preference, meaning that they cannot live on any world other than a Ringworld or a Gaia world. That means that finding worlds for your pops to live on is very, very difficult, basically impossible. You'll need to go out and find some different pops in order to expand normally. Ocean Paradise forces your pops to start with the Aquatic trait. Aquatic costs 2 points and gives you some bonuses to basic resource output as well as housing on all ocean worlds. There are some negative modifiers if you're on a dry world, so try to avoid those. Your homeworld will be a size 30 ocean world and gets the Ocean Paradise homeworld modifier. That modifier basically makes this world slightly better than a normal world, but slightly worse than a Gaia world. For this great boon, you will lose out on any guaranteed habitable worlds, and instead they will be replaced with frozen worlds. You'll also start inside a nebula, so you can have the special starbase mining building a little bit later, which is okay. Overall, the main drawback with this is that yes, you lose your guaranteed habitable worlds. If you don't play with guaranteed habitables, this shouldn't really bother you. Your pops will all still be ocean world preference, so you can go out and find other ocean worlds, other tropical or continental worlds, and go and colonize those. It's not as massively oppressing as the Gaia world start, though it is still a little troublesome. And speaking of ocean worlds, while we're in the C tier, I guess it's time for the secret call out. I hope you see what I did there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still watching and you've not skipped ahead and you've actually decided to watch this bit, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Slingshot to the Stars is much better than it has ever been, but it's still not amazing. The main bonus here is that you will get a minus 75% starbase influence distance cost, meaning you can go ahead and forward settle or snipe important systems very early on in the game. There are even some special builds you can play around with by using this origin to make that reduction even better. You'll also start with a ruined megastructure, a quantum catapult near to your home system. That has an archaeology site and can be upgraded, so it has a short range, not the full range. Whenever you use it, your catapulted fleets will get a fire rate bonus of plus 50%, but it still has all of the downsides of a quantum catapult, and so it's really not that useful. Your fleets will still scatter, and they will not be able to group up into large armadas, nullifying any brute force attack. This is still much better than it used to be. We're no longer losing any guaranteed habitable worlds, and having that quantum catapult within your borders, ruined or upgraded, will increase your chance of rolling the mega engineering technology a little bit later into the game. Broken Shackles is a very, very mixed bag. You'll start with 3 to 22 pre-FTL species on your capital world, meaning that you should have a variety of different habitability classes available. This means that you can basically play a little bit like a machine empire in that you can colonize any world you find, unless you're really unlucky and you don't roll one of the habitability classes. If that wasn't enough of a bonus, after 1 year, your factions will spawn in the game, granting you additional happiness and unity empire-wide, and you'll get a 50% faction unity gain bonus for the first 10 years. On the downside of things, you'll start missing 3 of the basic technologies, and your starting jobs are pretty terrible. I'm looking at you, homesteaders. Somehow they'd made farmers worse. I honestly don't understand farmers already, but they made it worse. Homesteaders are awful. Don't use them. Unemploy them. Do anything with them. Clerks are better, for God's sake. Anyway, your homeworld also does not get the plus 30 habitability bonus, so you might be at 80% habitability rather than 100. There are a number of additional minor bonuses and minor penalties that I'm actually not going to go through because there's far too much, but overall, bear in mind that this is less powerful than just starting plain with something like, and I hate to say, Galactic Doorstop. We're now up to the B tier. Everything from here onwards is a net positive. The Remnant's origin starts you on a size 22 relic world. Your guaranteed habitable worlds also gain the Colonial Remains modifier when you colonize them. That reduces building and district cost by 25%. On top of that, you'll start with the Archaeo Studies technology and an archaeo lab on the capital. That lab costs quite a bit of energy to upkeep, but will generate you some minor artifacts every month alongside your research. In addition to that, you'll start with 6 ruined archaeology blockers on the capital, and you'll get a few extra on those initial colonies too. When you clear these blockers, you'll get some amount of minor artifacts, and you'll almost complete a random technology. This could give you quite a technological boost, especially on higher tech speed settings. So this origin is going to boost your technology early on, as well as providing you with an option for an ecumenopolis in the mid-game once you have expanded out into the universe and claimed 20,000 minerals. Of course, this ecumenopolis also does not require you to take the Ascension perk, so in some ways this origin also saves you 1 Ascension perk slot. Mechanist has long held a soft spot in my heart. It's honestly one of my favourite origins, and it's better than ever before. You will start with both the powered exoskeletons and robotic workers technology, meaning that you can start building robots right from the get-go. On top of that, you'll have the machine template system technology, allowing you to customize your robots as a permanent research option. Empire-wide for the entire game, you'll get 15% additional mechanical pop assembly speed and +1 mechanical species trait picks. So any Empire with this origin is a perfect candidate for a cybernetic or synthetic ascension. If that wasn't enough, you'll start with the robotic assembly plant building on your capital, granting you a minimum pop growth and combined assembly speed of around 6, which is really, really good for a starting growth rate. That's almost on par with a hive mind, and 8 robot pops that will start with traits matching their job, so they'll be better at producing energy or minerals, though they will have the bulky and high maintenance traits balancing those additional positive traits. But honestly, those traits are really nothing to worry about. Having assembly plants unlocked right from the beginning of the game means you can put that building down first on all of your colonies and guarantee a much higher level of pop growth than any other biological empire outside of a Hivebind can manage from the beginning. And if you're enjoying this video, please guarantee the growth of that like button. Tree of Life is an origin that only Hivemind empires can take. You'll start with a Tree of Life on your capital and be able to plant saplings on other colonies. All of your colony ships will cost less alloys by 50%, but an additional 500 food. You will be slightly weakened, however. If any of your planets get to 50% devastation, the Tree of Life feature will be removed, and you'll get a modifier reducing stability, increasing upkeep from jobs, reducing resources from jobs, and planetary build speed. So try to make sure your Tree of Life doesn't end up in the firing line. As long as it doesn't, you'll get 15% more pop growth speed, 10% society research, 10 housing, 4 additional maximum agriculture districts, and all for the cost of just 4 food upkeep on the capital. For all of your other colonies, you get 10% pop growth speed, the same society research, 5 housing, and 2 more maximum agriculture districts for half the food upkeep at 2. These bonuses basically mean you'll be getting more pop growth speed than a regular Hivemind empire. You might be a little surprised to see Calamitous Birth so high up in this tier list, but honestly, it's gotten quite a bit better. You'll get the massive crater on your homeworld, which has been updated. You'll get buried lithoids, which are basically a blocker that lets you spawn a new pop, and you can build lithoid meteorites. Planets colonized with lithoid meteorites get more buried lithoid blockers +2 and a lithoid crater. On your homeworld, the massive crater grants you +50% effects to lithoid traits. For example, crystallization. You will get a 50% bonus to your pop assembly if you are a lithoid pop. You also get 6 more maximum districts, 6 mining districts, -6 agriculture districts, so what, you're a sentient rock, and 25% additional pop growth speed, which kind of nullifies the -25% pop growth speed that lithoids get. On any other world you colonize, you will also get the lithoid crater. That gives a -50% habitability penalty to any non-lithoid pops. So this origin basically lets you guarantee that all of the worlds in your empire can only ever be lived on comfortably by you and your people, effectively denying them to anyone else. This doesn't help if somebody conquers you and enslaves your people and forces them to work on those worlds, but otherwise it could be kind of nice. Hegemony lets you start in charge of a federation, a bit like Common Ground, but this federation will be a hegemony federation, which means as long as you stay the strongest, you will remain in charge. You will of course get the diplomacy tradition unlocked, and you will lose your guaranteed habitable worlds regardless of the game settings to 2 new empires that will spawn and be the subservient members of your Fed. Why is this good? Well, you will be able to, from the get-go, start building up a Federation navy, and not just you, but also you'll be able to convince your 2 allied nations to start building up a Federation navy, and that means you can use a Federation navy from day 1-ish to launch invasions of other alien empires you might find out there in the galaxy. Not only that, you can kick out one of your 2 initial starting members and eat them if you feel like it. Void Dweller starts your species on a space habitat. It will get a special trait and the habitat preference. You will get a nice modifier reducing habitat build cost, increasing the maximum number of districts and how many jobs each district on your habitats will have, and increasing the number of building slots you get from non-urban habitat districts. This basically means you start the game with the Voidborn Ascension perk. You won't be able to pick Voidborn later, and you get all of the bonuses Voidborn has, so this origin basically gives you an extra Ascension perk for free. You will of course start with the Orbital Habitats technology, so you can build more habitats and more orbitals to expand your habitats. You'll get hydroponics farming, which is a great technology to have, allowing you to build hydroponic bays on star bases, eco-stimulation, powered exoskeletons if you're a lithoid, and zero-G refineries if you're a lithoid. Though I would not recommend taking Void Dweller and lithoid. You won't get any guaranteed habitable worlds, instead they will be replaced by resource-rich systems which are better to build your habitats in. The main issues with Void Dweller is that early on, the start is quite punitive. It takes you a lot more resources to in essence colonize a size 8 world, which is pretty crap compared to a regular empire that only has to spend a few alloys, consumer goods and food on a colony ship to then go off and colonize a size, 15 or 16 world. You have to build your planets and then live on them. Later on it does get better as you can scale up your economy, but early on you will definitely suffer. Don't forget you will get the Void Dweller trait, which makes your pops really great on habitats. They'll get 15% additional output, but they will be worse on other planets, on non-artificial worlds, so that ignores Ecumenopolis worlds, and of course Shattered Ring or Ring worlds. You will get minus 15% pop output. That's bad. And minus 30% happiness. That's very bad. It makes conquest rather difficult because you will struggle to make sure that the ruling classes are happy if they are your own pops. You can't resettle your pops and make them in charge. That doesn't really work. Important thing also to remember is that if we're looking at hive mind Void Dwellers, this goes from being B tier to the top of A tier and possibly S tier. Hive mind Void Dwellers are very, very overpowered at the moment in Stellaris. Yeah, they're just crazy. Here Be Dragons starts you off with a Sky Dragon Guardian in your home system. Yes, you get a Space Dragon Leviathan that will come and kill anybody that tries to kill your home planet. Killing the Guardian will grant you a permanent Empire modifier, and if you're the right species type with the right civics, you can resurrect the dragon. Now, resurrecting the dragon can be a little difficult, but if you can do it early on, this goes from being B tier to kind of S tier because you can have a 100k fleet running around. It's crazy, especially with a hive mind and cordyceptics. Wow, bonkers. If you go the normal route and don't kill the dragon, you still get access to the dragon and can command it later on, but it does require you to complete more traditions and or an ascension path before you can do that, which is generally much later than the reanimation option. Being able to rely on a Leviathan for your nation's defense gives you some really, really good early game defense. You can turtle up and kind of ignore the other empires around you if you have the Here Be Dragons origin. If you are a dictatorial empire, you can take the under one rule origin, which basically lets you roleplay as the God Emperor of mankind. You'll start with a special trait on both your leader and your species, and you'll also get a special ruler. There will be some in-game events that happen which are really quite fun, and within 40 years you can change to an Imperial Authority type, which comes with a whole bunch of bonuses and problems, or stay dictatorial. Later on there's even something to do with a Golden Throne involved and trying to keep that God Emperor alive. What about those cool traits that I mentioned earlier though? Well, the first one is perfected genes. Your species will get plus 25 years leader lifespan, but lose 15% leader experience gain. That is not great, but given your primary leader, your God Emperor, starts with additional levels, it's not too penalizing. Your leader gets the Luminary trait. On top of that, they get access to special leader traits that no one else in the game has access to, and those leader traits are honestly fantastic. Really good stuff on top of just this Luminary, and they'll also level up as you level your leader up. The leader is what makes this build so powerful, so you'll start at +3 initial levels, so that's a minimum of 4, and get 40 years of additional lifespan. On top of that, you'll get plus 1.5 stability and 3% unity from jobs empire-wide, and that modifier will go up as your leader does excellent things early on in the game. This trait will change, however, with time, so be careful of it. It's also important to note that you can stack additional leader levels with civics, for example with Experience Cash getting +1 leader level, and also Distinguished Admiralty and choosing a commander. You'll end up with a level 7 leader right from the start of the game. Dictatorial will then make their modifier work even more, so basically you'll have unlimited edict capacity from day 1, reduced amenities usage from day 1, and all round just have a great time. Do be careful of the unity upkeep though, that can be a little crippling. Welcome to the A tier. You may be unsurprised to learn that this tier is even better than the B tier, but slightly worse than the S tier. Anyway, what do we have here? First we have Prosperous Unification, arguably the worst origin in the A tier, and also interestingly the default origin you'll play with in Stellaris if you don't really choose your origin. It is quite a good origin. Of course, you'll start with a normal number of guaranteed habitable worlds, and you'll also have 4 additional pops and 2 extra districts on your capital, which kind of represents an extra 15 years of pop growth in one place. That's a really good leg up on the competition. And if that wasn't enough, you also get a massive bonus on your capital as well. For 20 years, you'll get 15% happiness, 25% amenities, and 10% more resources from jobs. That means you won't have to really worry about amenities, you'll have very high stability due to that bonus happiness, and an extra 10% resources on top of the modifier that your capital world gives you anyway. This is a great economic start for any nation. Resource consolidation is only available to machine empires. However, your capital will start as the best possible world for a machine world, with absolutely no blockers. You will lose all other home system planets, however, but you do get a 10 energy deposit on the capital star. But what does a machine world do? Well, it grants you an additional 10% resources from jobs, yes, it's basically like a Gaia world for machines, reduced pop housing usage, an additional replicator job, which is blocked with a blocker at the start of the game, but you can clear that blocker relatively easily. That means your population assembly will be higher than other machine empires. On top of that, no one except machines can live on your world, so there is absolutely no conquest value for this planet except from the point of view of other machine empires, making you very, very safe. And that also doesn't include the fact that machine worlds start with having all of their building slots available and can build any number of mining or energy districts, allowing you to specialize your economy in any way you need to. Teachers of the Shroud allows you to start as latent psionics. That means you are partly on the way to completing psionic ascension. You cannot pick an ascension path, but that is because you already have one picked for you and you must go down the psionic path. You won't need to take the special ascension perk to do this, so this origin saves you an entire ascension slot. and you can do this as soon as you research the psionic theory technology, pretty much, and then yeah, you can complete psionic as a tradition incredibly early. That isn't necessarily super powerful unless you do it around year 10 to 15, but it can be very, very crazy to be fully psionically ascended before year 20. I mean, honestly, it's a bit wild. Combining that with Psi-Corp buildings or Psi-Core buildings, you will have massive bonuses to your resource output pretty much across the board for all the pops on your planet. So it's a great economic boost once you complete that around year 15, 20, maybe 25. Overtuned is in essence the genetic version of Teachers of the Shroud. You'll be able to select very, very impressive overtuned traits right from the start, and you'll have the gene tailoring technology already researched so you can modify your populations and begin going down the genetic ascension path as soon as you unlock those extra traditions. I'm not going to go over what all of the overtuned traits do, but in essence they have a very low cost in terms of trait points. They all reduce the lifespan of your leaders, but you in essence get access to late game traits that you would otherwise need to genetically ascend in order to pick. And they stack with regular traits, meaning you could technically get 60% pop growth on your species from day one, or be getting 30% additional research from jobs, things like that. It's a little bonkers. Now we're at the S tier, which is the best tier. If you've skipped ahead, this also means you get to look at the full tier list in its entirety, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen, if you've skipped. If you haven't, good on you. Anyway, the Clone Army Origin is still hilariously overpowered. Not only do you get ancient clone vat buildings, meaning your pops don't grow naturally, but instead you'll be getting bonkers levels of pop assembly every single month, so you can probably get up to 100 pops in the first 20-25 years, easy. You'll also get the Clone Soldier trait and the Clone Army Admiral trait, which will make all of your admirals absolutely devastating and reduce the upkeep of all of your fleets. Later on, you can double down on your clonitude by becoming Ascended clones, and then you get bonus outputs to your Specialist as well as Leader resource outputs, which is honestly crazy. That's more research, alloys, etc. Or you can choose to become more of a normal species again, going back to the disgusting old version of reproduction. If you do that, you'll be able to start growing again normally and get your pops above the magic 100 number, but you don't get those crazy bonuses Ascendant clones can get. Basically, this origin gives you a massive economy and more powerful fleets and admirals. What more do I need to say? Scion lets you start out as the little bitch of a fallen empire. The Fallen Empire gets a wormhole leading to your capital system and will intervene in any wars as long as you are losing against a superior enemy. So if you think you're going to lose a war, probably best to disband your fleet, build up lots and lots of armies, and then let the Fallen Empire come in and save the day, because they will. The Scion Origin basically lets you play the game on easy mode. You'll have a big brother constantly looking out for you and occasionally giving you nice gifts, as well as defending you when you need to be defended. Necrophage is basically the upgraded version of Syncretic Evolution. You'll start with two different species on your capital. A pre-patent species that can be anything you like and will be growing population on your planet, and then a necrophage species which have a special trait. We'll get to that in a moment. Your guaranteed habitable worlds will be replaced with pre-FTL civilizations that you can invade and thus be guaranteed more pops right from the get-go. On top of that, if you're xenophobic, you can use a special purge policy to turn any alien pops directly into your necrophage pops, which are pretty much the best for working any jobs other than worker jobs. Necrophage grants your leaders 80 years of additional lifespan, so they probably won't die in most games you play. You get minus 75% pop growth speed and organic pop assembly speed, but you shouldn't be growing organically or assembling these necrophage pops. You should instead be creating them through purges or through the Chamber of Elevation building. You'll get 50% off in terms of pop upkeep and 5% more specialist and ruler pop resource output. You do lose 10% worker pop resource output, and all of these modifiers stop applying if the pop becomes hive mind. Basically, a necrophage empire gets very good early game bonuses And through conquest and purges, they can make use of any species they find out there in the galaxy by converting them into their own people, even hive minds. On the surface, Imperial fiefdom would seem rather bad. In the distant past, your homeworld was invaded by an alien empire who now rule over you. You are a vassal to a much superior alien overlord. However, after 40 to 65 years, the alien overlord and any other vassals they have will end up splitting up in something of a civil war and succession crisis. That leaves a power vacuum that you can easily step into and then get all of the nice advanced tech that the Imperial Fief Overlord has. On top of that, being a specialist subject is not that bad. If you're a bulwark, you're going to be getting massive economic boosts from your overlord. We are talking lots and lots and lots of additional resources, which should really make up for the negative modifiers you get from that subject type. In essence, you've got a sugar daddy paying your way through the galaxy who's eventually going to keel over and die and leave you a bunch of free real estate. Any millennial's dream. The Progenitor Hive origin, due to the overpowered power of leaders, is now one of the best origins in the game. This origin will grant you passive experience every month for each of your leaders. That means your council, or nodes because you're a hive mind, and your regular leaders will be getting to maximum level before basically any other leader type in the game. You can also construct offspring nest buildings, which increase the menial drone output of all of your drones on a planet by 10%, in addition to giving you some drone assembly. Not only that, but as long as you have offspring ships in your fleets will be shooting with more accuracy, evasion, ship fire rate, and sublight speed than any others. Yes, if your offspring ship dies, that is a big problem, but honestly, that happens so rarely, and it only really happens in situations where you're already losing, that this isn't generally a big problem. And if all of that wasn't enough, your homeworld will start with a Progenitor Nest planetary feature, which grants you even more bonuses and even more pop assembly speed. It's really, really very powerful. If you've enjoyed this tier list on Origins in Stellaris, and you'd like to see another tier list where I rank lots of different Stellaris related things, you can check out my Ascension Perks tier list by clicking the video on screen now.